So thanks, Ray. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about a piece of customer journey research that we did for a UK retailer called Matalan. For those of you who aren't aware of Matalan, they are a UK value retailer. So they are in kind of the value space. They pride themselves on not necessarily being the cheapest in the market, but providing really good value products to their customers. They sell predominantly homeware, menswear, women's wear, and children's wear, and fashion gifts and toys as well. And I guess the title of the paper that I'll be talking through today was inspired by the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, which I was watching around the time we kind of started thinking about talking more widely about a piece of work we'd done together. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a really powerful and compelling piece of television that I would heartily recommend. But essentially, it got me thinking about sort of the wider context around our roles and just kind of applying that lens, I suppose, of what's going on more broadly. And I suppose at the moment, the way we generate nuclear power is through a process of fission, so basically splitting atoms apart. But the ideal scenario and what nuclear physicists are working towards is finding a stable way to produce electricity using nuclear fusion, so bringing nuclei together. And it felt to me like that's really, I suppose, what we do as qualitative researchers. And it's about finding kind of elegant and robust solutions that bring data together. And this piece of research that I'll be talking about today is about how we used qual techniques to fuse data into a really coherent story and drive change within Matalan's business. So just to give a bit of context before I talk about the actual research process, I guess it's a really tough time on the UK high street. The industry is very much in flux, and Deloitte really summarises those challenges very well. They talk about the crisis in consumer confidence. We have seen, since there was a decisive election victory in the UK in December, and it looks like the Brexit saga may at some point in the not too distant future be coming to an end, that we have seen a bit of a mini Boris bounce. So there have been kind of a slight rise in consumer confidence since then, but it was coming from a really, really low base. And we have seen over the last few years that consumers don't feel that comfortable necessarily to be spending in the way that they had been in the past. We're also seeing rising costs for UK retailers and channel shift as they're disintermediated by online-only players who have a completely different cost base and a different marketing model. Discounting has become the norm in the UK, with consumers increasingly expecting heavy discounting. And we're seeing accelerating store closures across the retail estate. Even stalwarts of the UK retail arena like Marks and Spencer's are closing stores and kind of just rationalising their offer more. And as a result of all of these things, we're seeing more and more businesses in the UK go into administration. So we've seen some really big players on the UK high street disappearing or coming back in a much smaller form as a result of some of these challenges. And I guess just to say a little bit more about Matalan, well, they really are a rose amongst thorns in this space. They have shown consistent growth over the last few years. They're a privately owned business, but they've really embraced their identity. So they're very happy to accept they are at the value end of the retail spectrum. They're happy and embracing their out of town retail estates. So essentially they tend to be based on retail parks outside of the main high street and urban centres, and that's a kind of become a conscious decision for the business, a strategic decision that they're happy to pursue. They've also made a decision to be an omni-channel retailer, and what I mean by that is not a retailer that has some shops and a website and an app, but that actually they look to integrate all of those together, giving a seamless experience to customers. And the business is on a 3-year transformation journey because of the challenging environment they find themselves in, because of changing expectations around technology. They really are pushing to change the business and drive the success that they have clearly shown over the last few years forward. And the business is working on 6 key pillars and 6 key themes that are helping them to do that. So Matalan came to us really with a challenge about sort of trying to understand the end-to-end customer journey. Now, I guess some of the important context around this piece of research is that actually there wasn't a challenge about having enough information or enough data, in inverted commas, about customers. They have tons of research and data. Every month they collect thousands of verbatims through their customer satisfaction research. They've got a big brand tracking program in place, and they run a lot of ad hoc research as well, delving into sort of tactical and strategic decisions in the business at different points in time. But the challenge was that no one was reading the whole story end to end. So the business has all of this primary research. They have a loyalty scheme which provides them with a lot of data about customers and customer behaviour. There are different teams in the business who have different pockets of knowledge. So for example, the digital team have a load of information about the digital customer and what they're seeing happening there. The social media team have a ton of information about interactions with customers and potential customers online. And they also have a call centre and things like that, where they're constantly interacting with and getting information from customers and potential customers. But while the business knew a lot of the challenges they faced and a lot of the things that perhaps they needed to improve for customers, what they didn't know was how that all pieced together into a comprehensive customer journey. And they also didn't know what they should prioritise from the customer perspective. They have priorities from a business perspective, and they played into that what they thought they knew about the customer, but they didn't know what the full impact was for the customer or exactly how to prioritise it. And so in the context of all of this, I guess we worked quite closely with Matalan at the beginning of the project. We hadn't worked together before to agree clear terms and a clear brief for this piece of research, because one of the challenges with an end-to-end customer journey in an environment as complex as this is actually that where does it begin and end? It can be really hard to agree terms of reference that are going to work well for a piece of research and enable us to answer the brief really well, but also set priorities and manage expectations within the organisation. And one of the first things we did was actually we worked really closely with stakeholders and tried to engage them from the start. And actually having a team of qualitative researchers working on the project was a really important part of that, because we were able to use the skills that we have as experienced moderators to explore kind of stakeholders' thoughts, feelings, needs and requirements from the research. And running those stakeholder sessions is a really important part of, and doing some one-to-one interviews with them was a really important part of getting a project off on the right foot and helping them to come on board with things. And I guess at this point, I suppose I could say I've got some sort of groundbreaking, amazing new technique that we used for this research, and that actually we came up with this amazing new qualitative research approach that no one's ever used before. But actually that would be really very disingenuous of me. What we actually did in this piece of research was came up with a really practical plan of action. We worked closely with stakeholders from the beginning of the process, and we did all the things that you would expect, very basic, fundamental things. So we followed Matalan on social. We shopped online and in store with them. We talked to friends and colleagues about Matalan. And we delved deeply into their existing data. Now, as I said, they've got thousands of verbatims they collect every month from customer satisfaction research, but we took tons of reports, both qualitative and quantitative, and synthesized them together, looking for patterns and themes and applying new lenses of thinking about the customer journey as a whole and thinking about moments of pain and delight for the customer. And this wasn't necessarily about coming up with amazing new insights that no one had ever spotted before. We did come up with some new things, but it was really often about kind of looking at the things that were already there, adding weight and evidence to them and starting to prioritise and piece them together across the whole customer journey. So how did we move from fission to fusion? Well, the first thing was actually taking the data that the business had already and coming up with some sort of summation of it. So this kind of, as a starting point, as a wooden horse to begin the project with, this is what we think the customer journey looks like. These are the moments of pain and delight. And we then layered onto that another level of engagement with stakeholders. So we took this back to key managers within the business through a qualitative workshop where we collaborated closely with them. We replayed what we thought we knew. We worked together to identify gaps and silos and challenge kind of thinking and bust myths as we went. And we worked together to layer on kind of their perspective, their insight, what they knew, the things they felt needed addressing, their challenges, to build a really rich and multifaceted picture of the customer journey. And the next thing we did, I guess, and this is a really important part of the story here, was obviously we asked customers. Um, but I have to say, for what was actually quite a big project, we didn't do a huge amount of customer research. As you can see from kind of this big list that's on the slide here, we did lots of different kinds of customer research, but we didn't do lots and lots of it. We actually were very focused in the research that we did. So we focused on gaps, we prioritised areas where there were unknowns. For example, as an organisation that has an aspiration to be an omnichannel retailer and is making a huge amount of investment in that space, we did find that there were some blind spots around the digital consumer. It's obviously been an area where there's rapid change, so quite a bit of the primary research that we did focused on either that element of the customer journey and the customer experience, or how that dovetails with other elements of the offer. So actually, what's the interaction between the digital experience and the real world experience of the store? We did all sorts of things that you might expect. We ran a couple of workshops with customers. We pre-tasked them to live the customer experience. We got them to talk to us about what that experience was like. And we presented back to them the things we thought we knew and got their feedback on it. We shopped with them in an online space. We went into store with them. We spoke to staff and we observed what was going on. So all of these things were bringing kind of qualitative skills to a very real world problem to help the business prioritize their challenges and understand where, if they invested in different areas of the business, where was the most kind of profitable area to invest in from a customer perspective. And fusing this primary research onto what we had already learned from doing that more kind of audit focused piece of all of the research that Matalan had already in-house, and kind of taking a curated view of that. So although we didn't have tons of scale in the primary qualitative research that we did, we had enough evidence elsewhere to back it up and kind of add weight and strength to the data that we had. And where did we go from here? Well, I guess once we'd done all that and we kind of got to a point that we felt we had a really strong map of the end-to-end customer journey, which had incorporated the views of kind of the existing data the business had, the views of stakeholders, and kind of bringing their knowledge and other information that they had to bear on it, and then curated with a customer perspective as well, and bringing them into the process, and non-customers, so people maybe who've lapsed or haven't shopped with Matalan before. We then presented that back to the team of senior managers in the business. But we also then gave them work to do as a result of that. And we ran a workshop with them to talk about what were they going to do on the back of the research, what were the challenges in doing that, and how were they going to take it forward. We then took all of that and presented it back to the board of Matalan. And I have to say that Wendy, who unfortunately can't be with us today, but who was a client for this piece of research and is the insight manager at Matalan, has been absolutely tenacious in following up this research and driving it through the business. People have been talking about the customer research, the customer journey research at Matalan. It's become part of the dialogue and the culture and the life of the business. It's been a really important piece of research for them. But actually, Wendy has been absolutely critical in that, and sort of not resting on her laurels once the research was finished, and actually following it up and following it through. And her team are now accountable to the board for kind of how that research is being used and driving change in the business. I have to say the qualitative aspect of this research was absolutely essential in getting buy-in from key people within the business and driving that change. Kind of having consumers talking on video, having customers showing what was happening in store, showing their experience and talking about it in their own words was extremely powerful in kind of challenging the status quo. And what's happened as a result? Well, this has been a piece of research that's had a significant real world impact at Matalan. In store, they've made changes from sort of tactical things to very strategic things. For example, how as a value retailer do they use technology to help with minimum staffing ratios and fulfill customer needs? They've completely changed some of the things they were doing about that and reset their priorities around it. They've also done work on things like the click and collect journey, so how they interweave online and the store experience. Online, they've made a load of changes, so they've added functionality to the website. More strategically, they've made changes around how the offer is positioned and how the team think about what is good service from a customer perspective. And the UX team have really grabbed hold of this piece of research and run with it. And strategically, at the top of Matalan, that's where we've seen the biggest change. The senior team realised that perhaps wasn't enough focus on the customer experience from a holistic viewpoint, and that not all the pain points the research identified were being addressed. So what they've done as a result of that is actually change those 6 key pillars that underpin their strategy, and it's all become far more customer focused. So I guess as a result of this piece of research, there has been a huge cultural shift within the business and within kind of how Matalan conceptualises and talks about itself and what it needs to achieve to deliver for customers in a really challenging context. So just to finish up, I guess, what are the keys to our narrative here today? Well, really it's all about how good qual has helped us move Matalan from a data quagmire to fusing data in a really powerful way. We've taken a fragmented data set and using qual analysis skills and experienced qualitative research has brought stakeholders on a journey with us. And this journey is one for which primary research is only part of the story. We've really collaborated closely with the team there, both the insight team and the senior management team within the business, to create insights that have sizzled within their business and have challenged and changed the culture of that business in a really positive way. And that has already had a real world impact for customers on the ground in the experience that they have of Matalan, and is an ongoing and evolving journey for the business. So that's everything from me today. Thank you very much, and I will hand back to Ray.